Hi, my name is David Warner Matheson. I am a graduate of the U.S. Army Ranger School, the 82nd Airborne's Jump Master School, and the United States Military Academy. I was never in actual combat, although when I was in the 82nd Airborne, we were going to jump into Haiti, a combat jump into Port-au-Prince during the transition between when Aristide was elected. We were in the air and we turned around and came back. But I have participated in live fire exercises, including, we used to have this, I don't think they still do it anymore, but we used to have to low crawl underneath live rounds going overhead from a 7.62 millimeter M60 machine gun. We used to use the M60 machine gun. It was nicknamed the Pig. And I can tell you that when you're low crawling underneath live 7.62 rounds that are going over, they're going right over your head, you have to stay low. They put barbed wire, like lines of barbed wire, so you don't like lift your head up, but nobody's lifting their head up when the Pig rounds are firing right over your head and you're low crawling. You are pressing down into the dirt and getting as low as you can when those M60 machine gun rounds are going over your head. So you don't need any of that background, however, to see, just like the first time you watch it, if you're paying attention at all, that there is something very bizarre. It's just glaringly obvious, very bizarre, with the videos that are being shown from the 4th of July shooting in Highland Park, Illinois, just north of Chicago, where this 21-year-old apparently used a AR-15 type rifle. That's only 5.56 millimeter, although the rounds don't, the shots don't necessarily sound like that. But this 21-year-old allegedly bought this and many other expensive rifles. Not exactly sure how he had the means to purchase all of these. He came from a troubled family. He was known to the police. The police had shown up at his house more than 20 times before for domestic violence between his parents, and also 2 incidents involving him. So he's known to the police. That's a pattern. And immediately we're told, oh, this is the one who did it. There can't be any other explanation. But when you look at these videos, it is glaringly obvious that some of the people in these videos, when these rounds are going off, these are people wearing yellow vests. They're apparently some kind of security or maybe quote unquote police officers in this incident. They're just driving around nonchalantly, not at all as if their lives are in danger, as if they're about to be in mortal danger from somebody firing off rifle rounds. Other people are panicking, but all these people in yellow vests are just walking around nonchalantly. Let's take a look. And by the way, this is footage from CNN. This is Wolf Blitzer and 3 other men in suits allegedly telling you what to think about this incident, allegedly analyzing it. They're not analyzing it at all. They all look at it and they just talk as if there's absolutely nothing weird about this video. I'm not showing any video that CNN hasn't already shown you. Let's take a look.
Andrew McCabe, we've got some video of the actual shooting incident from earlier in the day in Highland Park, Illinois. Let me play some of that for you and then we'll discuss. We heard Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois say a little while ago that she hadn't heard gunfire like that since she served in Iraq and was injured, as we all know. What's your reaction when you heard that high-powered that gunfire that was going on? It wasn't what some people thought it was going to be fireworks or anything like that. These were deadly bullets.
Yeah, that's no fireworks. Well, I tell you, that's hard to watch. Just listening to it really takes me back to, working as I was a firearms instructor in the FBI and a SWAT team member. That is the distinctive sound of someone shooting very rapidly with a rifle that is at least a semi-automatic firing weapon, which means you can fire as many bullets as quickly as you can pull the trigger, or potentially even a rifle that has been modified for fully automatic firing. Those are much rarer in these sorts of circumstances, but nevertheless, that is a high-powered, unbelievably lethal military weapon that is being let loose on a peaceful civilian population there to celebrate the 4th of July. I don't think it gets any worse than that. Every time we have one of these situations, we just kind of retch and disgust at what has happened.
Now, this next video is from CBS News 2 in Chicago. It is from July 4th, 2022, from just hours or even less after the shooting. So this is from CBS News Chicago, and very interesting, the commentator, the news anchor, tells you, and I want you to listen as much as I want you to watch. And what's really interesting, if you listen closely, this is the moment the shots begin. So you hear the first shots, and there's a woman's voice that begins immediately with the first shot saying, gunshot, 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 right away. It's like she knows, she's got a script, she's got a cue, and she comes in right on cue. In fact, she comes in a little early, because like when the first shot is ringing out, she is yelling, gunshot, 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 gunshot. And then the commentator says, well, it looks like the people in that video had a hard time identifying whether they were gunshots or not. And it's like, no, they didn't. There's a woman's voice immediately. It's like she was waiting for gunshots so she could say, gunshot, gunshot, gunshot. Just have a look and give it a listen. Use your own critical thinking and ask if there's anything bizarre about these videos, because it is very questionable. People should be asking questions about this instead of us being just immediately told, this is the individual who did it. This is the lone nut. He just planned it all by himself. Nobody else was in on it. And we've got it all figured out within, 24 hours. Case closed. No questions need to be asked. Have a look.
That's right, Mugo and Audrina, we're getting some video, and social media often tells this story first. Sometimes you got to be careful what you're absorbing from social media, obviously, in these critical first minutes, but we want to play for you some video we just got from TikTok, and I want you to listen as much as you watch. This is our first audio that we're getting of the possible shooting this morning just after 10 a.m. as the Highland Park 4th of July parade kicked off. Let's roll that video. We heard from Sean a few moments ago that it sounded like seconds until folks realized what they were hearing. You saw the folks in the parade, those looked to be like young people, maybe in a band. They started to run, and then the folks on the sidelines start to process what is going on. Let's re-rack that if we can, and maybe amplify the audio. I don't know if we can do that. I didn't get a real clear image or hearing of that, but that's the critical moments there just after 10 o'clock. Let's re-roll that TikTok video real quick, and then we're going to hear from Governor Pritzker. Governor Pritzker. Governor Pritzker.
These videos raise a lot of questions. Why are people running around screaming and shots being fired, and all these individuals wearing yellow vests, security, police, I'm not sure exactly who they are just nonchalantly, completely unconcerned, riding and walking around at a very slow pace as if they expected all this to happen? There's other people in the video too that we could zoom in on that are also behaving very strangely or are just looking like they're not concerned at all. And then in that second video where we have this woman's voice saying gunshot, gunshot, gunshot with the very first and second gunshots. And then at the end of that first video, we have this male voice saying, do we have everybody? Do we have everybody? Do we know? That's a very strange way to talk if you're just a family in the midst of this horrific incident. That's not the way that somebody, I think, would be expected to talk in that kind of a situation. Those aren't the kinds of things that I would expect somebody to say if they were just out there with their family watching a parade and this horrific shooting happened. Do we have everybody? Do we have everybody? Do we know? Do we know? Who are you talking to? That sounds like what you would say to a subordinate in a military unit. Like, hey, do you have everybody in your squad? Do you have everybody in your fire team? That's not the way you would talk to somebody in your family. Do we know? Anyway, this video raises some extremely disturbing questions, and I'm wondering why nobody seems to be looking into these questions. And this is a pattern that goes back to the first lone nut. Actually, it wasn't the first one, but the first incident where the authorities, or the most famous incident where the authorities immediately told us, oh, we figured out who did it, and that was the shooting of President Kennedy in broad daylight in Dallas, where they immediately said, oh, it's Lee Harvey Oswald, he acted alone, and then he was shot that weekend. And so I'm going to close with a couple of clips from an interview with a great American named Vince Salandria, who that very weekend when Lee Harvey Oswald was shot, right after the killing of President Kennedy, realized that there was something more going on than what he was being told, than what the American public was being told. And Vince Salandria, in these clips, this is from an interview in 1993, 30 years later, and now almost 30 years ago from where we are. And he is explaining some of the reasons why that incident could not have been what the American people continue to be told that it was. The killing of John Kennedy was not done by a lone nut. And he's explaining in 1993 the implications of that for us today. And he was talking in 1993, and the things that he said have been borne out even more so in the ensuing 30 years, and they are even more relevant to where we are today than they were back in 1993 when Vince Salandria was saying them.
A perfect patsy. Sure, he was associated with the American intelligence. Did he do any firing, Dave? No, he didn't do no. He did no firing. With that rifle, which fired due to its sight high and right, with that trigger mechanism, which was defective, with his lack of skill as a marksman, he could have fired away all afternoon, right through the afternoon, into the night, and have done no damage. But was he doing any firing? No, the paraffin test indicated he hadn't fired a rifle. No, he did not do any firing, but will the American government try desperately to implicate him in the firing? Sure, because so long as they have that thread hanging on in him, and all his threads leading into every aspect of the American political and even the Soviet and Castro scene, then they have an opportunity to threaten those people who would want to deliver the truth. We could counter by making this, well, you're pro-Castro? You could counter, Dave, by making it a pro-Castro plot. Or, oh, you're a rightist? Or, oh, you're a pro-Soviet? Or, you're ACLU, you liberals want to come in on it? Well, you see, it's so convenient he was dipped into so many paints of so many varieties of the American political scene that everybody is vulnerable. But no, he did no shooting.
Why is this case still so important 3 decades later?
I think it's most relevant to our society. I think that what happened in Dealey Plaza was that a duly elected president was fired. But the constitutional process was relegated to a paper-thin facade. That what was left at that time to American democracy was relegated to theatrics, to the theater of the absurd.
Is there any hope at this...
Excuse me, and that what is happening now is a continuation of what was set forth then. And that is that we became more a militarized society. Under the guise of Cold War, we were told that the increase of governmental expenditures to the military sector of the economy was necessary. So we began to spend in the order of $300 billion of national wealth per year on the military-industrial complex, which caused us to neglect the private sector, neglect education, neglect health service delivery to the poor, neglect increasing poverty, neglect the homeless, neglect, in short, an effort to make the society fair and to make the wealth of the country more equally and equitably distributed, so that we'd have a state which we could be proud of, where the needs of our people would be met, where there would be social mobility, upward social mobility, which I enjoyed, and the future of the society could enjoy. Instead, we became militarized. Instead, rather than being competitive economically and maintaining our competitive edge and being able to maintain the highest standard of living in the world, we have been slipping. And now we have slipped to 11th and 12th in our standard of living. The number of poor increases. The injustice of this unequal distribution of wealth, it escalates. Education, public education is neglected. The poor are neglected. And we see that although the Cold War is dissipated, the military expenditures remain pretty much flat, hanging close to the $300 billion a year point. And we find the president, I think basically a decent man, nonetheless coming out for increased expenditures in the absence of a Cold War for intelligence. That's why it's so significant. The people who seized power November 22nd, 1963 at Dealey Plaza are still in power and are still distorting the quality of the American constitutional structure and are still destroying the quality of life in this society, destroying our cities, treating our cities like third world cities. Well, they don't bomb them like they bombed Hanoi or Baghdad, but nonetheless, they look very much like they've been bombed. Look at Philadelphia, which was a city of neighborhoods, beautiful working class neighborhoods with good housing stock. Go to North Philadelphia. I think that Hanoi at its worst would not compare disfavorably to North Philadelphia today.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important.
Should the president become involved? I know he has to appoint members to the review board to force the files out, which are still being withheld. Do you think the president should become more actively involved in resolving the controversy for the American people? And can he do that?
I think ideally he should announce that we had a coup in November 22, 1963. But practically, he cannot do that. I don't think we have had a president with any degree of power of any consequence since the killing of Kennedy. that the Dealey Plaza firing of Kennedy was, and continues, and will continue to be, a message to every president. You're just the president so much and no more. We, the killers, own the presidency. The Dealey Plaza killing of Kennedy did not only kill a president, it effectively killed the presidency. Every president who has had to follow Kennedy, even one I can think of with very few brain cells, had to know what happened. Had to know, therefore, what could happen to him if he did not recognize where the power over the presidency really lay. So I suggest to you that, yes, ideally, the president should openly advise the American public and the world that we had a coup, but that as a practicable matter, that is not going to happen. And therefore, it's up to the American people to use this politically, not to divide up the society. And I suggest to you that the people who killed Kennedy have effectively managed to divide up the family, rich against the country, in a very effective way, rich against poor, class against class, race against race, ethnic group against ethnic group, shattering old coalitions, that people must come together in the knowledge that a more open society will benefit all of us, will improve the quality of life for all of us, will improve the relations in the world for all the peoples of the world. And therefore all of us have a great stake in knowing the truth of that coup and reversing it and organizing politically. One man, one president won't be able to do it, Dave. Each of us who come to know the truth must join together, organize politically, and struggle, maybe a long struggle, to defeat the power, those rulers who took over the presidency in Dealey Plaza. No single president can do it for us. We have to do it.
Andrew McCabe, we've got some video of the actual shooting incident from earlier in the day in Highland Park, Illinois. Let me play some of that for you and then we'll discuss.